In a world filled with challenges and opportunities, it's not just about having big dreams, it's about having the right approach to turn those dreams into reality. Whether you're navigating the competitive landscape of business or seeking personal growth, it's all about the approach.
Welcome to our latest episode of The Approach. I am your host, Dr. Davis McAllister. We call this show The Approach because when I worked in military intelligence, our success and failure depended on taking the right approach. On this show, we discuss aspects of leadership and problem solving and the approaches that have made our guests successful. My guest today is Kenny Thomas of the PTSD Foundation of America, Dallas chapter. Kenny served in the U.S. Army from 2000 to 2004, participating in Operation Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom, and earned numerous accolades. Struggling with PTSD after his service, he found help and recovery at Camp Hope, joining them in 2016, and then rising from a volunteer to the PTSD Foundation of America, Dallas chapter's general manager. Kenny combines his military experience, understanding of PTSD, and communication skills to effectively aid other veterans like himself, aspiring to one day be their national outreach director. Let's welcome Kenny Thomas.
Hey, welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Tell everybody who Kenny is, where are you from, what your background is, and what led up to where you are now.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Coleman, Alabama. It's a small town in Alabama, about an hour north of Birmingham. Mm-hmm. Grew up on a full-time functioning farm to where if it didn't rain, we were worried about money. So it was a full-time functioning farm and passed down from generation to generation. And as a young child, I always knew I wanted to be in the military. I had my uncles in the military. My grandfather was in the military. So I knew that was my route after I got out of high school. I tried doing split ops after my junior year in high school to do basic training between junior and senior year and then go National Guard after my senior year. Yeah. But I was taking acne medication called Accutane, and it was sensitive to the sun. So they wouldn't let me do that. The day I graduated high school was the day I went to MEPS to do my physical and all that good stuff. August 8th of 2000 is when I was sworn into the Army. Okay. Went to infantry school. I got stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, February of 2001. Mm-hmm. And really going into the military and the Army, there was no thought of war. Even as an infantryman, I joined for the experience, to get some college money, the benefits, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I was young and dumb like all of us at the time. So, yeah, I did that. We trained a lot at Fort Campbell. I was put with the 1st and the 187th Infantry Rockasans, mm-hmm. Alpha Company, 3rd Platoon. Was with them, and then 9/11 happened. So the morning of 9/11, 2001, we were on a company run around the division. We came back. I got my breakfast, went up to my barracks room. Back then, I was shining my boots and ironing my BDUs. Mm-hmm. And I was watching TV, and I saw the first tower get hit, and they were putting it on some news channel. And I think I was watching something real. So I flipped the channel. And then so I report to my unit, get down there. They send us to combat lifesavers course that morning. Mm-hmm. Within 5 minutes of sitting down in our seats to start the training, they sent us back to our company headquarters, and we were told we'd been attacked and we were going to war. By the next morning, we were loaded up on the planes, everything ready to rock, but we didn't leave for the next few months. We got 30 days leave prior to going. I think we left late November. We flew into Pakistan. We set up at an airfield there for a while with the Air Force. And Air Force gets taken care of. I learned that really quick. They're in flip-flops and tank tops, and we're in full gear. So I was like, what is going on here? We got to Pakistan, and we got ready to go in Afghanistan. So we went from Pakistan to Kandahar Airfield, where we pulled security on the airfield. And then we got into our first mission, Operation Mountain Lion, where we was going through the wells back. I can't remember what mountainside it was. We was going through clearing caves, looking for Osama bin Laden. Our Afghanistan deployment was very uneventful. We got shot at a few times, but that was it. So it was not a true introduction to war. So after 10 months in Afghanistan, I came home. And I didn't think I was struggling, but after 10 months of living every day, waiting to get attacked or thinking you're going to die every day, you have a change of mindset. So I found myself doing stuff a little bit more risky, searching that adrenaline rush, doing stupid stuff. Mm-hmm. And then we get orders to be part of the invasion of Iraq. So 2003, we went over, I want to say we got to Kuwait in December. I remember doing Christmas there, I think. And we went over the Burma to Iraq in February. Iraq was my true introduction to war. That's where I really got our first big firefights and stuff. We were pushing towards Baghdad. We were going through Al-Halal. It was our first big battle. And I remember going through that town, had rows of people on each side going, "We love Bush. We thank you, blah, blah, blah." I remember this albino Arabic guy. He stood out like a sore thumb. I remember seeing him. He had no happy expression, no thank you, America. He looked like he wanted us all to die. I got that funny feeling in my gut when I saw that as we're coming through Al-Halal. And we get past the crowd and we take a ride on the road, and then it's ghost. Like there's nothing there. So it gets really eerie really fast. We got word back from our scouts that were ahead of us letting us know, hey, we might be running into an ambush. So we were on the lead truck. We pulled up to this compound, had some grain silos, a couple of buildings, had a 8-foot regular fence on it. And my gun team got put in a fighting position just adjacent to the very first building. And about 10 foot in front of us was this bush. Behind us across the road was this row of trees and then open field. We got right in front of the bush to cover the left and right section of that first building. First platoon went to the left of us. First squad went to the left of my gun team. Second squad went to the right of my gun team. So we formed a nail. So as we're sitting there, we're getting ready to breach the wire. We found out later the Syrian mercenaries in the bush in front of us came out. His hands held up yelling. They kept saying he was a decoy for his buddy behind him in the bush who threw a hand grenade at us. Luckily, we all got down. My assistant gunner got hit by the grenade in his face, but he was okay. But that was when it all popped off. It was from hell there. So we fought through that day. We didn't lose anybody. We had a bunch of guys get injured, but that was it. I remember we were directly engaged with the building in front of us. We had the Kawas coming in, lighting up the windows, but there was stuff going on behind us. That's where the ambush was coming from. We were taking fire from the front and the back. Luckily, we had the Kawas there to help support us on the backside. Ended up clearing that compound that day. We found 10 pre-dug positions with about 30 RPGs waiting for us to drive through and die.
Wow.
We were really lucky that day. That was the introduction to what combat was. From then on, we continued to push to Baghdad. We went to Baghdad International Airport. We went on to Talafar. We took over a prison in Talafar and ran patrols there. And then we went to Mosul. We were in Mosul when it happened in Mosul. What was the dude's name? The one that they hung him in court.
Yeah, Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein. Wow, I couldn't remember that for some reason. Anyways, we were in Mosul when they captured him. And that was crazy because they were celebrating with AK-47s. We thought we were taking fire from everywhere. But luckily, we didn't really get into too much that day. We finished that deployment, came home, and that was pretty much the end of my 4-year enlistment. I ETS'd out, went home back to Coleman, Alabama. I thought I was doing pretty good. I didn't think I was struggling too bad. I get into college, everything starts, like the new wears off and reality starts sinking in. I think it was anatomy and physiology class. Something triggered me. I started sweating from my neck down. I had to go home and change shirts halfway through class. It was so bad. So that was my first panic attack I experienced. I didn't know what is going on, nothing like that. So I continued to struggle for the next few years. Didn't really know what to do with it. I'm not willing to admit I had something wrong with me. The way most of us was raised, suck it up and move on and get over it. So 2006, I found myself, I took a bottle of Klonopin and drank a 6-pack of beer and laid down and didn't want to wake up. I didn't tell anybody, didn't call anybody. That was like I was done. Luckily, I did wake up about 20 hours later, and I still wasn't really ready to admit I had a problem. I thought, I'll figure it out. So the next few years, I ended up finishing college, started working in the medical field as a respiratory therapist. I worked in acute care for adults for a while. Then I went to a children's cardiovascular intensive care unit in Birmingham at the Children's Hospital in Alabama. So I worked in that cardiovascular unit for a few years. And when I was there in 2012, we were coding this baby as a Muslim child. I was bagging the child and the mom was in the corner doing the Muslim prayer. That triggered me. The rest of the team, I knew my history, saw me, and they pulled me out. So that next morning, I could come off shift and thought I almost killed somebody's child because of what I got going on. So I was heading home that morning. I was driving back home, and it was everything I could do not to drive my car into the pillars on overpasses on the interstate. Like everyone I passed, I was trying to drive faster and faster so I could hit it and die. For some reason, I pulled over, called 911, and knew I give up. So they came out to me, picked me up, and that was my first introduction to the VA system. Of course, how that goes.
Yeah.
To the emergency room that day, they sent me to the acute psych unit in Tuscaloosa. I spent 2 weeks in their acute psych unit, and I got put in their PTSD program. I did 3 months in their PTSD program, got out of that, went back home, started working in the medical field again. Still had my job at Children's, but after that, I got burnt out and was scared I was going to cause more issues. So I ended up leaving that position and going back into acute care for adults. Did that for a while, and then 2015, I was struggling really bad again. I'd quit my job in respiratory altogether. I'd lost everything. I was 35, had to move back in with my mom.
Yeah.
I reached out to the VA, and they let me back in the PTSD program again. Went through that for another 3 months and made a really good friend in there. And then after I got out of that, a few months later, he killed himself. So it really sent me spiraling quick. September 21st, 2016, I was down in the creek, my mother's house down in the creek. I had a gun. I was going to shoot myself, put the phone on the edge so they could find my body. I was tired of being a burden to my family. I felt like I was worthless and I'd be better off dead and they would be better off too. My goal was to shoot myself that day, have the creek clean up the mess, and then everything would be all right. As I'm sitting there praying for God to take me, my phone rang, and it was a Marine friend of mine, the PTSD program, the first time when I was in Tuscaloosa. So to have him call was like, all right, probably need to answer this. If it was someone else, I don't know if I would have answered it.
Yeah.
But since it was him, I picked it up. He said, God put you on my heart. What's going on? So I told him what the situation was. He said, stay on the phone with me. So about 35, 40 minutes later, he made it to my house where I was living. He's talking to me about what do I need? I didn't at the time. I didn't know what to do. He told me about Camp Hope in Houston, Texas. So he said, it's a program for combat veterans. It's peer-to-peer. He's going to really help you. I was like, I can't afford to go to that. I can't afford a plane ticket out there. I can't afford to not work for so long.
No.
He said, you don't have to pay anything. It's all free. So as soon as he said that, I didn't want to know the rest. I was like, will it help me? Yep. All right, let's go. The next morning, they had me on a plane from Birmingham to Houston. That started my journey with Camp Hope and the PTSD Foundation. Yeah. We got into the program, and I've been removed from the military at this point for 12 years. And so I haven't had that camaraderie. I haven't felt that brotherhood. I haven't had that safety that I had in the military. Yeah. So as soon as I walked on campus, got in process, and I sat down and walked into my bay, that all came back. Like they was welcoming. They understood. Like every guy in that bay knew what I was going through, knew how I was struggling, and could relate. So after 12 years, I finally found that camaraderie and that brotherhood again. Went through the program about 4 or 5 months, graduated the program, and knew there was nothing back in Alabama for me. So I offered to be a volunteer driver for the Camp Hope. I did that for a few months. They hired me as a house manager. I worked my way up through program, mentoring, and then they offered me the position to develop the transition phase of the program. 2018, I created the last few phases of our program. Yeah. After 5 years at Camp Hope, it takes a toll on you. You're investing in all these veterans. Some are successful, some leave early. We can't save them all. We've lost 15, 16 guys. So it's a pretty heavy job. So after 5 years of that, I had the opportunity to move to corporate. I went to corporate for a year just to figure out what my journey looks like, what my next steps are. And they offered me either the general manager position here in Dallas or the one in Tampa. I was like, I'm not going to Florida. No. Stayed out here, took over the Dallas chapter, and here I am getting to help veterans just like myself who are struggling down in that hole and just need somebody to reach in and pull them out. And we get the opportunity to do that every day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's truly tremendous work. And I'm glad that you got the help that you need and you're able to sit here and talk with us today. If you don't mind, look, can we go back? I want to deconstruct some of the stuff that you talked about and maybe help our audience understand a little bit better some things. When you got done with that firefight and you rolled in and you saw the 10 fighting positions that they had loaded up with RPGs, but you had already eliminated the threat. You're already in that fear mode in that whole situation anyway. Do you feel like knowing they had all that ready for you added to the fear factor? Or do you feel like it was more of a relief that, man, I'm glad we escaped that one?
It was more of a relief. And at the same time, an acceptance of, hey, you could really die over here. Every day is a possibility for you to die. That's normal in everyday life, but then it's ramped up 100 times when you're in combat.
Yeah.
It was a relief to know why we were okay, but at the same time, it was a numbing effect to be like, all right, I've got to push these feelings aside and just keep fighting through it
Yeah.
and numb myself to my environment just to survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you got out and you started experiencing that first panic attack in class, could you help describe what did that look like?
Yeah.
You
So
know,
I cannot remember for the life of me what the trigger was, but
yeah.
we were sitting there and we were going through something in the body, obviously, but I started feeling my palms get sweaty, felt my heart rate increase. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And then I started sweating and scanning everything around me. I had no clue what was going on. I was freaking out.
So if somebody were to watch you or see you experiencing that, what do you think that they would be seeing from the outside?
I see somebody in fear of death because I thought I was going to die. I was going to have a heart attack.
No. Yeah. I'm trying to help people that listen, they identify veterans. If they see somebody struggling, they can have a better understanding of what that looks like. Movies have not done us a lot of justice
No,
as veterans because they think that everybody that has some sort of flashback or panic episode just automatically resorts to violent behavior. All the veterans that I've talked to over the last few years, it has not looked like that. The
it's the
majority.
exact opposite.
Yeah.
Yes, we've turned all that inward. So
Yeah.
thank you. If you're working with veterans or if you see a veteran that's struggling with some PTSD from combat, you can feel it too.
Yeah.
You can feel their edge. You can see them scanning. You can see them sweating when it's cold outside. You can see knuckles clenched. You can see all their body just tighten up. I think that's the biggest thing you'll notice when you see somebody going through that. They're in self-preservation mode.
Yeah. Fast forwarding, when you were doing respiratory therapy and working on that child with a Muslim, you started having an episode there. What did that look like?
I froze. They saw me. So I just froze. I disassociated completely from the moment and I quit bagging the baby. That's why they pulled me out and started bagging. Another friend had taken me into another room and helped me ground myself and get back to reality. But I just froze and I was lost.
Yeah.
I wasn't there at the moment mentally.
Do you feel like you were just spaced out, or were you reliving something inside your head?
I was reliving in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was definitely reliving in my head.
Yeah.
You can't get the screams and the prayers of Muslim parents, and it makes their child has died over in combat. You can't get that out of your brain. It's seared in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you went through, not to bash the VA by any stretch of the imagination, because they have done a lot to help veterans. The system is what it is. How effective do you feel the VA PTSD program was for you the first time versus the second time around?
I don't think it was effective at all either time. And I think they were doing the best they could with what they knew at the time. They've come a long way since then, but at the time they put me through the first round, I went through prolonged exposure for 3 months while I was there. There's a lot of success rates with prolonged exposure, but it's circled around one traumatic event, not multiple traumatic events.
Yeah.
So for me, I pushed it deeper and deeper. So when I was triggered, it came out 10 times worse.
Yeah. Could you describe what prolonged exposure is for people that don't necessarily know what that is?
Yep. So prolonged exposure, you talk about the traumatic event, you come up with some kind of rating scale of where you're at on it as far as anxiety, how you feel, all that good stuff. And then you write it down, you record yourself talking about it in therapy. And then at night you go back to your room, listen to it over again and write down your SUD scores. And then that process over 3 months, my SUD score came down, but because I was burying it deeper. I wasn't actually processing it.
Yeah. So when you went back through it a second time, were you still focused on the same event that you were the first time, or did they take a different
Second
approach?
time was they did. Was this cognitive behavioral therapy? Yeah, I think they put me through that.
Okay.
But the second time, really, again, it was avoidance. It wasn't processing. So I didn't get a chance to process everything until I was doing EMDR.
Yeah. Was it something that you were doing self-consciously, or do you just feel like it wasn't being recognized and addressed?
I feel like I don't think it was being recognized and addressed. You can avoid there because there's nobody to hold you accountable. But when you get to a peer-to-peer program, everybody's there to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
So I think that was the big difference for me as far as digging deep and actually facing my demons.
Yeah. Do you feel like when you were going through the VA program, and I'm trying to draw a comparison between the difference of the two programs, and did you feel like you had people there that could relate to you, or was it a little bit more whitewashed? It's very general, more medical type, and it's almost like a cold approach.
It is. It was more general. It wasn't all combat veterans. There might have been 20 people in the facility. It was not only for PTSD, but also for addiction and alcoholism. So the domiciliary was there also. It was more general, focused on trauma in general and working through addictions and substance abuse. The peer aspect wasn't there. And you also hear some guys trying to tell you how to work through this to get your percentage up. So they're there just to get their benefits increased when, no, I need help.
Yeah.
So I think that was my experience. I don't know what everybody else's experience was like.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of addictions that develop as a coping mechanism for people that have had PTSD. You definitely cannot treat them the same, even though they're tied to the same event. So when you got to camp, what was that experience like when you first got there?
The thing that helped me the most was the support from the guys in the Bay. Like you get there, I've been separated from the military for 12 years at the time. Yeah. I haven't had people to understand me that whole time, I felt like. But when you get there and you get to introduce to everybody and you're sitting around the fire pit talking, sharing stories, you finally feel at home again. As a veteran, I don't know if it's for all veterans, but for me as a combat veteran, I didn't feel safe to talk about some of the stuff I had experienced with civilians, family, civilian doctors, just because they don't understand. It's not their fault. They just don't understand.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was in a safe enough environment to do that. When you get to Camp Hope and start just general conversation, you automatically feel like they get it. I don't have to fight this by myself because all these men around me, they're fighting it too.
Yeah. Did you feel like it was, let me go back. So the majority of the people that are there, was it a variety of different roles that they served?
Yes, it was all male combat veterans from all the branches, from all the different MOs and jobs. You had support MOs, you had direct line of fire MOs, you had guys who were in the rear of the gear for a long period of time, but they were getting mortared and getting shot at just as bad. Yeah. Then you have your drivers and stuff like that, who I would have hated to have been a driver. As light infantry, we're not driving, we're walking, so we're spread out. War is war. It doesn't matter what your job is.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a big melting pot of all male combat veterans. Yeah. And then all your staff member that works with you there, your mentors, your managers, the ones that are directly interacting with the veterans are combat veterans themselves who have been through the program.
Yeah. I've got a really good friend, a retired Green Beret, and he definitely had some issues coming out and had some blackout episodes and those types of things, and did things he didn't even remember doing. It was like he was completely dissociated from his body. And he started going through therapy. It was a mixed crowd, some non-combat, some combat, those types of things. And he said he had to fight through that mental process that he really didn't feel like he needed to be there. But at the same time, he knew he did. And so it was that conflict inside. But then when he started finding out that there were non-combat role type people there, and he finally, one of the other veteran counselors that was at that type of program said, look, people go into the MOs because that's what they're geared to do. People go into support roles because they don't want to necessarily be up there on the front line. Their experience is what it is. And he was able to relate and understand from that standpoint that nobody was safe. Just rolling on a convoy, you're a primary target. And so you're constantly having to watch even just a little movement of a piece of paper on the side of the road. You're constantly heightened like that. And a lot of those people, when they come back, they're having to deprogram just driving down the street. They see trash on the side of the road, and they have to literally consciously stop their thought processes to say, I am not back over there, to try to head off having one of those episodes. What were some of the things that you felt like were most impactful that came out? Was it some of the stories that you heard from other people? What was some of the things that really resonated with you when you were going through that with the other vets?
A lot of your stories are similar in a lot of ways, not only from experiencing combat trauma, but childhood trauma. You start to open up and talk about all your traumas, and you find out childhood sexual trauma for adult males is huge, and nobody talks about it, but it's truth.
Yeah.
And you find out that's a very prevalent thing when you look at veterans that I've worked with through the PTSD Foundation. They've had childhood trauma, some type of whatever, and then they get re-traumatized in combat, and it just a constant cycle.
Yeah.
So really, I guess getting to the seat to understand that and to be able to process all my trauma through the mentors, through the counseling, through what they do there. I think that's what really helped me the most.
Yeah. Did they do any other things in the program as far as physical health, nutritional health, any of those types of things?
So it's a holistic approach. Yeah, you've got your classes throughout the day where they start with emotional regulation, PTSD education, learn your relationship style. You start to understand why you are the way you are, not just your intimate relationships, but your relationships with people in general. So you start to understand that. They help you learn how to vision cast and stuff like that. They also do exercises mandatory, at least 5 days a week, 45 minutes a day. They got a great gym there, the indoor and outdoor gym. If you're not a gym person, you got some kind of physical element that won't allow you to work out. That you can play basketball, you can walk up and down the street, some kind of get your body moving for 45 minutes a day. What they ask for. And then the faith-based approach. So they are Christ-centered, faith-based. But for me, that's what saved my life. Christ, period, the end. But not everybody's got that journey.
Yeah.
So they understand that at Camp Oak. They understand my God may not be your God, but we just ask that you find your higher power to help you build some building blocks so you can be safe and really get out of yourself and focus on something bigger.
Yeah. That was one of the things that I found very interesting, because when I was in, and a lot of people don't think about this when you're in the military. There's a lot of guys that I served with that had no religious affiliation whatsoever. And then as they started having to go through healing, processing, and all those things after they got out, how many have gravitated towards that and has now become an essential part of their life because and they really have attributed that to helping save their lives, not just from a spiritual standpoint, but from a worldly standpoint.
I agree.
When you were going through the program and the classes, were there things that you learned about yourself that never even occurred to you, or either an issue or an aspect that you had never thought about?
Yeah, emotional regulation was the biggest eye opener for me. I can't say for everybody, but for myself, anger was a very comfortable emotion for me to have. So if I felt hurt, I went to anger. If I felt sad, I went to anger. If I felt scared, I went to anger because it was all giving me this false sense of control, which is not real at all. You control yourself, how you process stuff, your emotions, and how you can think through stuff. So that was the biggest eye opener for me. Emotionally dumb, I guess would be a way to put it. I didn't have the emotional intelligence to understand how to regulate my emotions or to understand emotions at the basic level. Going through that class and getting educated on just the basic level of emotions, how to regulate, how to identify what they are, and how to really that was huge for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, anger is probably one of the most prevalent go-tos for a lot of veterans when they get out. Even when they get out, it's like the further you get from it, the angrier you get until you learn to process it and learn how to deal with it.
Anger gives that false, especially the combat veteran, you react to violence with violence. That's how you're trained, and that's what you resort to until you untrain yourself.
And when I first heard it, it resonated, but I never thought about it this way. When you're in the military, everybody has to go through some sort of basic combat training. And those of you in the combat arms, you're programmed to do one thing. That is your job. The military does a good job to get you to that point. But then they don't do a very good job on deprogramming you to get you back out into the civilian world. And the problem is that you have that memory. You can't erase memories. It's not like Men in Black where they can have the little neuralizer and forget everything. Is probably as nice as that would be to have at times. You can't just get out of the military and then all of a sudden just realize, oh, I'm a civilian and I can go back to what I was before, because you're not the same.
No, you're completely changed, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah. Most of our topics, I really wanted to focus on your experience because I really hope that we get some veterans or other people that have, experienced PTS and they are looking for resources. Could you go back and look at some of the things that you learned leadership wise and problem solving, everything that you have dealt with? That was a problem that had to be solved. And
Yep.
it's not always a business scenario where markets drop. Now, what do we do to get our market back up? It's a different problem solving approach because we have different areas of our life that we have to deal with. What were some of the things you learned from a leadership and a problem solving standpoint?
Really, from a leadership standpoint, is had to learn to follow again.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to find someone who had what I wanted and learn to follow them and be open to admitting where my shortfalls were, to what I needed to improve on. And really through that process, it helped build my leadership skills to where they're at today.
Mm-hmm.
Problem solving, I think I worked with those experiences. Everything can come off as black and white.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're working in the field where I'm at, working with veterans that are struggling, that are sick, that are in addiction and alcoholism, you can't see it as black and white. You have to be open to other avenues of approach, because if you go to a sick veteran that's struggling and you're trying to help them and they're cussing you up and down the wall saying you don't give a damn about them, it's not that veteran. That's a symptom of what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Because the next day they'll call you and apologize and be like, hey, I get it. So when we look at problem solving, whether it's that situation, a problem with my team or whatever, I try to have a more open approach instead of a black and white answer to everything. At times, black and white's a way to go because you need to answer fast. But if it's something as heavy as what we do, you have to be open to other avenues.
Yeah. So at what point did a family start coming into this process for you?
It was after I graduated at Camp Hope, and probably it was still another 4 years after I graduated. The entire time between getting out of the military and going to Camp Hope, I had girlfriends, I had a job, but I never could really connect enough because I didn't want to put somebody else through what I was going through.
Yeah.
So I stayed away from really getting deep connections with people as far as getting married. But after Camp Hope, opened myself back up to it, and then rest is history. I love my wife.
Yeah. they have to love us to put up with the stuff that you
I agree.
Yeah. Does Camp Hope offer anything for spouses to help them understand and work with their loved ones?
They offer family support. So while you're going through the program, you got family coordinators, family volunteers that offer support for them as far as processing groups to help them learn different ways to understand what the veteran's going through. They go through when the war comes home. It's part of our series. We got the Combat Trauma Healing Manual for the veteran. When the war comes home is for the family member. So the family coordinators will walk through that workbook with the families. They're getting education on what's going on with their veteran and teaching them, hey, you've got to set some boundaries. The veteran can't say, this is my PTSD, this is why I did this. Like, no, that's not acceptable. Like, you got to set a boundary, but like, you got to take responsibility for that. Like, you can't blame it on that. So they learn different ways they help the family. They learn the hard way that if a veteran comes to the program and gets the help they need, but goes right back to a toxic situation or a situation where the family hasn't had any healing, it's not going to be successful. So you have to heal both parts for the family to come back together successfully.
Yeah.
And that's what we do as far as a chapter for what we do out here. We offer our support groups for the veterans, but we also offer family groups. We have a family coordinator that does that for the families in the area.
Yeah. So like for spouses, for my situation, my wife was a military brat. Her dad retired from the Navy. She grew up around military installations and knew the personalities that go along with that. And she's got a very strong personality, which I had to have that because I'm pretty hard-headed. You have other people that get in relationships with married people that have had no exposure, no experience dealing with people that have been in the military or currently in. What's been your experience as far as those situations or scenarios with some of the veterans that you've worked with? Is there a different approach with a spouse that has had prior exposure to the military versus somebody coming into a relationship and never really had that exposure or understanding of what goes on with a veteran that's enduring PTS?
Oh, definitely. So you got a spouse that's been with a veteran through their military career, or maybe the spouse is a veteran themselves. So they've already learned, they're more open and understanding to help their veteran through the process, and they understand they got to heal too. But if you got a spouse that has no exposure to the military culture, it's all blindsided them. They have no clue what to do because all they know about is what they see on TV and movies, which is not accurate.
Yeah.
They're thinking their veteran's going to murder the entire family or they're going to go on a shooting spree or whatever. And the reality of it is that's not what PTSD does. We turn that stuff inward. He's more likely to die by suicide than kill someone else.
Yeah.
To help the spouses understand that it's more of an inward battle and not this what's portrayed in society. The biggest part is educating them on that, helping them understand what's really going on with their veteran.
Yeah. Do you feel like it changes their viewpoint of how they see their veteran?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they see him more not as a machine, more as a human, I guess would be a way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I have another buddy of mine that went through a similar situation. He managed to get the help that he needed to be able to overcome, and married somebody that did not necessarily have a military exposure or background. One of the most difficult things for them is that she could not process what he was like before versus what she had there, and how much of a different person that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see where that can be tough because you just don't understand it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anything else as far as the organization that you want to share? Obviously, I'm going to put out your contact information. I'm going to put information out on the organization and how to reach you guys. What do you guys need help with? What do you guys need donation wise?
So, yeah, donation wise for Camp Hope for our program in Houston, they need donations from toilet paper to financial support. Think about what you need on a day-to-day basis to live. I think it's $144 a day per veteran in the program at Camp Hope. If you want to donate, you can go online at ptsdusa.org. Go to Give Help. It's got a list of needs at Camp Hope. If you want to support your local chapter, like here in Dallas, we got a golf tournament coming up May the 12th. We're looking for sponsorships and teams to join. If you want to volunteer with us at events, we're always looking for volunteers to help go out and to help spread the word. The biggest thing for the community to understand is if you know a veteran that is struggling, let them understand they're not alone. There's somebody out there that can help and support them through this process. And if we can't do it, we'll find someone that can. We understand our program's not the best fit for every veteran. So our goal is to get the veteran the help they need when they need it. I think that's the biggest part, our approach. That's the way we do it here. And we haven't said this yet, but all of our services come at no cost to the veteran or the family member. It's all free from what we do locally to going through our program. We provide everything the veteran needs to be successful.
Right. But just so that people have a perspective about how many veterans does Camp Hope work with at any given time?
Usually been averaging about 80 veterans.
Okay.
So
a large supply need to take care of that many veterans at once. And do the veterans they live on property while they're going through that process?
Yeah, they stay the entire time. They'll live there. I can break down the program for you. The program's broke down into 4 different sections, 4 different phases. So the first phase is black phase. When the veteran gets into the program, you give them your cell phone, any electronics, anything that connects to the outside world. For the first 30 days, it's called black phase. You have no communication. You can't call family. You can't go to any outside events. You can communicate with the VA, or if you have legal issues, communicate with your legal team. You can talk to your family through snail mail, but that's probably for the first 30 days. And that really allows a veteran time to get their head clear a little bit before they start working on some pretty big stuff. And for some of the veterans, it's the first time they've been sober for 30 days.
Wow.
So while they're in black phase, they'll do some introductory classes. Once they complete that, they'll go to red phase, which is the second phase of our program. And it's a progress-based phase. So that phase is usually from 3 to 5 months. During that phase, the veteran starts really getting into the core of their trauma. They'll start working with their one-on-one counselor. They'll be doing group counseling. They'll be going through the classes I talked about earlier. If they're alcoholic or a drug addict, they offer AA, NA, all that good stuff. This is where the veteran really starts digging deep into their trauma. So to go from the next phase is yellow phase, but be able to do that, like a rite of passage for you from red phase to yellow phase, is to read what we call our step 4. So that's our entire life up to the point where we're at. That's what really helps a lot of veterans open up. So when you got a veteran that's standing in front of everybody on campus, like putting everything out there, that veteran's like, I've experienced that. I'm going through that. Whatever that looks like. So that's a big rite of passage, but it also helps other veterans that are new to the program understand I'm not alone in this. Once they finish red phase, they'll move into yellow phase. The yellow phase is the final mandatory phase of our program to graduate. It's a 2-month phase where they start to take the tools and skills they learned in black and red phase and apply it to life outside of Camp Hope. So all their distractions they had in life before, their cell phones, their computers, everything all that gets reintroduced to the veteran in yellow phase. They get passes to go out on the weekends. They're able to come and go within regulation if they have a vehicle. They start to reintegrate with their family in yellow phase. It's all a slow step process, but that's when they start really getting acclimated back. Once they complete yellow phase of the program, if they need more time to transition out, if they need to save up money, find housing, whatever that looks like, we have green phase that allows a veteran an extra 3 months to get a better base before they leave the program and don't have that same support outside of the program. They can extend green phase on a month-to-month basis based on what the veteran is going through. If he's putting in the work he needs to in extenuating circumstances, we can extend it each 30 days. We've had veterans stay in the program for up to a year. And then once a veteran does leave the program, they're not done. Like you graduated kindergarten, now let's go into life. So once they'll come back, if they come back to Dallas-Fort Worth area, we'll pick up the aftercare. We continue to do the warrior groups with them. We'll continue peer-to-peer mentoring, connect them to resources, just really get them settled back in. If they're going to a place where we don't have a chapter, our chapters are Dallas, San Antonio, Houston, Tampa, and Atlanta. If they're going anywhere else in the country, we have a national team that can provide support groups virtually, peer-to-peer mentoring virtually, and connect them with local resources.
So people that are coming in with addictions, in addition to or as a result of PTS, what help can they possibly expect to get when they come to Camp Hope?
So our primary is not drug and alcohol, but we understand it's got to be treated. So the other counseling does work with them on drug and alcohol.
If they want to get a hold of you directly, how would they get a hold of you?
You can contact me at 256-297-0459. You can email me at kenny.thomas@ptsdusa.org. If there's a veteran in crisis, you can contact our crisis line at 1-877-717-7873. That's 24/7 manned by a combat veteran that's been through our program and helping the next veteran come through.
Does the veteran themselves have to make the call?
They do not.
So if somebody recognizes a spouse or friend, they recognize that somebody's having an issue, they can call in?
Yep. They can call the crisis line 24/7.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate you coming on to share this. My heart in this is there's so many guys that are struggling, and we're still under that statistic of the 22. I know for a little while that number had jumped up. I really want to see that come down and be a 0. Thank you for coming on and sharing. I definitely want people to contribute. Please look him up and find out what they need, send money, supplies, whatever they need to be able to take care of these guys and gals and be able to help them in their healing process. So, Kenny, thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Approach. Please hit that like button and subscribe for the latest episodes. If you would like to be a guest or would like Dr. McAllister to speak at your business or event, you can email him at info@drdavismcallister.com. You can also go to his website at drdavismcallister.com.